Our last speaker for today is Laura Sivels, a sustainability program manager specializing in sports and entertainment event sustainability at Rico Solutions. Her notable experience includes being a sustainability coordinator for Super Bowl LV host committee and as a verifier of the Council of Responsible Sport. Laura holds a USGBC certification as a Sustainability Excellence Associate and a master's degree in global sustainability. With a commitment to climate justice and equitable engagement, Laura aims to drive sustainable initiatives and inclusive stakeholder engagement within the sports industry and beyond. She is also the Director of Development at Golden Magnolia Sanctuary in our Fairfield, Iowa. Please help me welcome Laura Sivels.
Thank you. Hello. Also, real quick, I'm going to plug that last piece, Golden Magnolia. Cheyenne did a great job. As the Director of Development, we need money. We need other things too, but if you saw that and were really moved, would love to talk to you about Golden Magnolia. But in another role in my day job, I work in sports sustainability, which is a very, very niche topic. As you probably are aware, you're like, oh, I've never really thought of that or never really heard about that. So I'm going to share a little bit about my background, how I got involved, and some of the work that I do. So the next slide. So I want to start with a little bit about me because, one, I'll preface this is a presentation I normally give to students and in schools, and everyone's always wondering of like, what path, how do you get to do a job in sports sustainability? And the reality is I just found things that I kept liking and bringing them together so that I could find a job that I enjoyed the most. Some of my background, so I started studying economics and politics in Florida, where I'm from. When I was working in politics, there were some issues around sport recruitment and sports policy and sports governance, and I was like in love with it. I love sports, and I'm like, oh, you're telling me I could do sports for work, right? So I studied sport development and politics at the university, or the Sport University in Cologne, Germany. I always forget how to say it in English. And during that program, the program's a lot about sport governance, about how sports can help solve different problems in the world. So sport for health, sport for gender equality, and there was one tiny little paper around sport for environmental protection. And I wasn't really much of an environmentalist. You know, I'd never really done things in my work and my life. I myself had taken, steps to be more zero waste, but I had never thought about what a career could look like for that. And I read that and I just fell in love. I remember going through the rabbit hole of reading about what this could look like. And I knew in that moment, I was like, this is what I want to do for my career. It's really challenging though. There's not a lot of jobs and it was very new at the time. And so I decided to come back to the States and I studied for a master's in global sustainability at the University of South Florida to really learn the science behind sustainability. And while I was there, the Super Bowl 55 in Tampa Bay was going to be coming in a few years. And so I made a pitch to them why they needed a sustainability coordinator, why it was really important for a city on the water in Tampa, a large footprint like a Super Bowl and how it comes into a city. They need to be sustainable. And they said, you're right. And so I was the first ever sustainability coordinator for a Super Bowl. And now since then, in the Super Bowls past, they've now had sustainability coordinators for all of the subsequent Super Bowls. Thank you. And so after the Super Bowl, there weren't a lot of careers in the space, so I've been working in consulting on the side, working with this organization, the Council for Responsible Sport, and then as of last year, I now get to work in consulting full-time and have this be my job instead of also, working in government and other pieces. So I added this piece around the Council for Responsible Sport, which is a nonprofit organization that sets standards for sport and event sustainability. So it is for sport, but there are other events that have received certification, like the New Orleans Jazz Festival, different music festivals have received the certification. And the reason why I included it is because I think it helps set a really strong framework for what a sustainable event could look like. And so the 5 pillars for the Council for Responsible Sport certification is one, starting with planning. One of the most important things of my job and whenever I bring sustainability into an organization is to be the person in the room thinking about it. Like sustainability, 99% of it is just thinking about it, is having a plan, is thinking, what are you thinking about what's coming through the door? How are we intentionally making sure an event is inclusive? All of that work comes down to the planning. To procurement, so with Super Bowl and big events, this is the biggest headache. because they love to consume, they love to buy a lot of products, and to be able to get in front of them before they buy and say, hey, is the food that you're sourcing, is that coming locally? Like, are we supporting the local food systems, the local farmers in this event? When we're buying procurement, are we thinking about whether this is recyclable, or what's the end of life cycle for all of the little things, whether that's the tablecloths, or whether that's the fencing, or whether that's the signage for an event? 3 is resource management. So that is when we really think about sustainability, the waste, energy, water. That's a big part of our job in the day-to-day, is making sure that we're being intentional. Like, how are we making sure that we're catching a water leak when it happens at an event, rather than letting water use run crazy over the course of an event? Access and equity, that's a really important aspect that gets left out of sustainability conversations a lot, because it's not in that resource management what people think about. But how are we being intentional that this event is inclusive for everyone? We're thinking intentionally about how we can, cater the event, make a lot of times just little small changes, and whether it's the culture of the event or the very tangible aspects of the accessibility, to make sure that everyone, do we have elevators that go up to the hospitality, or are we saying that you have to have these explicit abilities to be able to be in our VIP areas? Like, those tiny changes are really important in the overall sustainability. And then community legacy, that's one of the other pieces I love the most about my job, is when you have these big events that come into these cities, a lot of times they can be really extractive, and they can walk away having them had a great time, but at the end of the day, it leaves the community with a big weight to carry. So making sure that these events are leaving a strong community legacy. So I'm gonna share a little bit of some case studies of some different events that I've worked with. So the next slide is the most fun one, but also the most challenging, which was the Super Bowl. So part of my role in the Super Bowl is, from the get-go, they established sustainability as a Forever 55 pillar. So that's really important, because one of the biggest challenges I experience is the buy-in to sustainability, is the overall organizational saying, yes, we care enough to look at everything with a sustainability lens. And so by establishing sustainability as one of their pillars, it made my job a lot easier, of all of the aspects of what we're doing, to say this is, this along with like community legacy and other pieces are one of the key pillars of what we want this event to leave behind. We were able to have, I think it's 16 different greening initiatives across the Tampa Bay area. So I'll show a video in just a minute that kind of explains it really well. But the thing I love most is that sport brings this spotlight onto a conversation that needs to be happening anyway, but with the money, the influence, the excitement around sport and sporting events, it's able to make really great things happen in communities. So these 16 green initiatives that we had in the Tampa Bay area were things like this community garden that we were able to have at a Boys and Girls Club. The picture in the top is from this carnival Gasparilla event that happens in Tampa. It's similar to, Mardi Gras in New Orleans or other big city festivals, but it's a huge parade, big party weekend, tons of beads that are thrown out, and at the end of the day, tons of beads are in the Tampa Bay. And so what we were able to do is we had hundreds of kayakers that the day after Gasparilla went out, kayaked around the bay, collected up tons of trash. And yes, that's something that should be happening anyway, right? I mean, we shouldn't have the beads ending up in the bay in the first place, but it's something that should be happening anyway. But without the influence and money and power of sport driving this conversation, even though this was months before the Super Bowl, that stamp of Super Bowl energy is what makes things like that happen. So we were able to have a number of greening initiatives. We have food and material donations, so similar to our mission at Golden Magnolia is really taking the food and the material that's existing in communities and making sure that the end of its life is not maybe where it was intended or where it wasn't used. So at a sporting event, one of the biggest parts is making sure that all of the materials, all of the food, it's not just going to the landfill if we're not getting used or once it's at the end of its life, but a big part of my job is finding places in the community that can use it. So at the end of every day, we have food partners that come and pick up any of the unused concessions. At the end of the week, any of the unused food. But then the material donations in Tampa Bay, this was especially fun because for those of you that might know sports, this was in 2021, the first year ever that a home team hosted the Super Bowl and made it to the Super Bowl. So the Tampa Bay Bucks made it to the Super Bowl. It was really exciting for the Tampa Bay area. And because of that, everyone wanted something from the Super Bowl. And the Bucks ended up winning the Super Bowl. So people actually started ripping down signs as they're leaving, which was great for me. I was like, yes, take it and cherish it and give it to your grandchildren and like have it become a family heirloom rather than sending it to the landfill. So here at the bottom left is a picture. We had a number of community centers that were able to take the signage from around the Super Bowl and use it to decorate, like game rooms and sports spaces in these community centers, make them more livable and fun. We used all of the flag poles that they hang up around an event. All of the flag poles, we used those, able to give them away to nonprofits, have them sign it. Some really great things there. And then we also have renewable energy. One of our sponsors was Tampa Electric, and so they sponsored renewable energy at the event. Here's another example. I work at a lot of golf tournaments and golf events, and here's an example of showing how one of the big aspects of my job is really taking sponsorship activations. So this event, sponsored by BMW, they have a lot of their own sustainability goals and values, and we drive them further. We say that's great that BMW as an organization is sustainable, or is trying, to meet these sustainable guidelines and drive yourself forward. But let's apply that to everything you're sponsoring, all of your events. And so having things like electric vehicles at golf tournaments. Let's go on to the next slide. And then here's another one. I don't know if any of you have been up to Duluth and to Grandma's Marathon, but this is a really fun race. Some of the things that I like when we talk about the circular economy model, these zero waste stations in the top right, they have them all across the marathon. And instead of having people throw the trash away themselves, which most times people are destined to fail, unfortunately, in deciding of what is recyclable and what's compostable and what's trash. We say you just put it on the table. And they have all of the waste streams behind the table. And so the volunteers, the Green Team volunteers, sort it out. People stand, they learn, they get to see, oh, this cup is compostable, and they probably would have thrown it in the trash. So love working Grandma's Marathon. I actually just volunteered in helping them for years past because Duluth is beautiful. They have hiccups in the bottom right, so if you're a runner, you know that in marathons or in a lot of races where they have cups that they provide, they're usually single use. You throw them on the ground. As you're running by the aid stations, there's tons of cups everywhere. And so Hiccup is a cool company that they, just created like reusable, but the same type of cup where people can drink them on a marathon. They can throw them on the ground. Runners can run over them. But at the end of the race, they pick them all up. They clean them, they wash them, and they take them to the next race. And then Grandma's Marathon also does a really great job with diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Like I was saying, that access and equity, they engage with local runners, with the local indigenous tribes and nations in Minnesota, and involve really the whole community in making it a great community event. So a little bit to get involved, there's some wonderful organizations that are doing sport ecology work that are, whether it's your favorite teams, your favorite leagues, I encourage you, if this is something that you're interested and passionate about, this applies outside of sport too, to the music industry. But call these organizations, these teams, these athletes that you care about to do better, to drive them to do more, to protect their local communities, to think about resource management, and to help create a better world and footprint. And I think, and that's it.